You are standing in a Roman street. The year is 79 AD. The empire around you is the most powerful thing the world has ever built. Roads that run straighter than anything for the next 1,000 years. Water that arrives in your home through stone channels, carried over valleys. Coins in your pocket that work in 3 different continents. You were born into the most advanced civilization on Earth, and the most certain thing in your life is that it will always be here. Above the town, there is a mountain. It has been quiet your whole life. Quiet your father's whole life. Quiet for longer than anyone can remember. There is a thin column of smoke rising from the top this morning, but you do not look at it. Nobody looks at it. The market is busy. The bread is warm. The mountain has always been there, and it has never been a problem. So your brain has filed it under not a problem. You are about to make the same mistake that every great civilization makes right before it falls. Not a unique mistake. Not a Roman mistake. The same mistake. The Maya made it. The people of Easter Island made it. The Bronze Age empires made it all at once. The Soviet Union made it. And the strange, almost unbelievable part is this. From the inside, in the moment, the mistake does not look like a mistake at all. It looks like success. It looks like business as usual. It looks like a normal Tuesday with a little smoke on the horizon. So here is the question we are going to investigate. Like detectives walking through a crime scene that is 2,000 years cold. If collapse keeps happening to the smartest, richest, most organized societies in history, then it cannot be bad luck. Luck does not repeat itself this precisely. There has to be a pattern. There has to be a mechanism. There has to be a single mistake hiding underneath all of these different costumes. And if we can find it in them, we might be able to find it in us. So let's start looking for the clues. The first clue is hiding in plain sight, and it is the thing every civilization is most proud of. Picture a single stick figure, alone, with one problem. He is hungry, so he solves it. He plants seeds in the ground. Now he has food, but the food attracts thieves, so he builds a wall. The wall needs guards, so he appoints guards. The guards need paying, so he invents taxes. Taxes need counting, so he invents writing and hires people who can count. Those people need managing, so he creates managers to manage the managers. Watch what just happened. Every single step was smart. Every single step solved a real problem. And yet our one simple stick figure now sits at the top of a giant pyramid of people, rules, and systems that all need to be fed, paid, and maintained forever. This is the discovery of an anthropologist named Joseph Tainter, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Tainter studied collapse after collapse, and he found that civilizations do not grow by becoming simpler. They grow by becoming more complex. Every problem gets solved by adding another layer, another rule, another department, another specialist. Complexity is the tool that built everything you love about your society. But complexity has a price, and here is the cruel twist that Tainter uncovered. The first layers of complexity are cheap and powerful. Plant seeds, get 100 times more food. Incredible deal. But each new layer gives you a little bit less in return for a little bit more cost. The 10th law solves less than the first law did. The 100th official produces less than the 10th. You are paying more and more energy, more and more effort, to hold the whole thing together, and you are getting back less and less. Tainter called this the diminishing returns on complexity. Think of it like piling blocks into a tower. The first blocks make you taller and stronger, but the higher you go, the more blocks you have to spend just stopping the tower from wobbling. Eventually, almost all your effort goes into not falling over, and almost none into getting anywhere. You can watch this happen to Rome in slow motion. In the early days, a Roman soldier conquered new land, and that land paid for the next conquest. Growth funded growth. It was a machine that ran on its own success. But once the borders stopped moving outward, the math quietly flipped. Now the army was a pure cost, an enormous standing force that had to be fed and paid out of taxes alone, guarding a frontier that brought in nothing new. So the emperors did the reasonable thing. They raised taxes. They expanded the bureaucracy to collect the taxes. They shaved the silver out of the coins to stretch the money further. Each fix solved this year's problem and quietly deepened next year's. The complexity that had once delivered the whole known world now delivered scraps, while costing more every single year just to stand still. Rome did not run out of soldiers in an afternoon. It slowly, invisibly, ran out of returns. And the civilization never notices it crossed the line. Because adding complexity is the exact same move that worked every single time before. It is the trusted tool. It is the reflex. When the wobble starts, the leaders reach for the thing that has always saved them. They add one more layer, one more straw onto a camel that is already buckling. So the first clue is not weakness. The first clue is that the strength itself becomes the weight. But that raises a darker question. If the warning signs are right there in the math, why can't anybody feel the danger coming? To answer that, we have to stop looking at the empire and start looking inside a single human skull. Here is something uncomfortable. Your brain was not built to see collapse. It was built to spot a tiger jumping out of a bush. A psychologist named Daniel Kahneman spent his whole life mapping the hidden bugs in human thinking, and his work explains exactly why the people of Pompeii kept selling bread under a smoking mountain. Kahneman showed that we mostly run on a fast, automatic, gut-feeling part of the mind. It is brilliant at quick judgments and terrible at slow, invisible, creeping threats. Picture our stick figure again, standing in a tub of water that is heating up 1 degree at a time. If the water jumped to boiling instantly, he would leap out screaming. But 1 degree is nothing. 1 degree feels like the water yesterday. And so he sits there, perfectly calm, perfectly reasonable, in water that is slowly cooking him, because nothing ever changed enough in a single day to trigger the alarm in his head. That is the first bug, and Kahneman's colleagues gave it a name. It is the normalcy bias. Whatever has been normal, your brain assumes will keep being normal. The mountain has always been quiet, so it will stay quiet. The empire has always stood, so it will keep standing. Your brain treats yesterday as the strongest possible evidence about tomorrow, even when smoke is literally rising on the horizon. Then there is a second bug, and it is even sneakier. Kahneman called it loss aversion, and the trap it builds is the sunk cost trap. We hate walking away from something we have already poured ourselves into. Imagine you have spent your whole life savings building a house at the bottom of that mountain. The ground starts to tremble. Every rational voice says, leave. But leaving means admitting the house, the savings, the years are gone. So instead, you tell yourself a story. It is probably nothing. It will settle down. And you stay, not because staying is smart, but because leaving hurts your heart more than the risk scares your gut. Now stack a third bug on top, optimism bias. We genuinely believe bad things are more likely to happen to other people than to us. Other towns get buried. Other empires fall. Not mine. Mine is special. Mine is different. Put those 3 bugs together. A brain that assumes tomorrow equals yesterday. A brain that refuses to abandon what it has already invested. And a brain that quietly believes it is the exception to history. That is not a stupid person. That is every person. That is you and me, wired by evolution to survive a world of fast tigers, trying to perceive a slow-motion avalanche we were never designed to see. So the individual is blind, but surely, you think, the leaders can see it. Surely the people at the top with all the information, in the room where decisions get made, surely they catch what the ordinary citizen misses. And this is exactly where our investigation takes its most disturbing turn. Because the room at the top might be the most blind place of all. Let's walk into that room. Picture a long table. Around it sit the smartest, most experienced people in the entire civilization. The advisors, the generals, the ministers. Each one of them alone is sharp. Each one of them alone has doubts. And yet together as a group, they are about to make a decision so bad, it looks insane from the outside. How? The answer comes from a psychologist named Janis, who studied groups of brilliant people making catastrophic choices. He wanted to know how rooms full of geniuses produce disasters that any one of them, on their own, would have spotted. He gave the phenomenon a name that has stuck ever since: groupthink. Here is how it works, and watch the stick figures, because this is something you have felt in your own life. The leader speaks first. The leader is confident. Around the table, one figure has a worry. A real one, a serious one. He opens his mouth, then he looks around. Everyone else is nodding. Everyone else looks so sure, and a cold little thought slides through his mind. If I object, I look like the difficult one, the negative one, the disloyal one. Maybe I am missing something everyone else can see. So he closes his mouth and he nods too. Now multiply that by every person at the table. Every single one has a private doubt, and every single one swallows it, because every single one sees everyone else nodding, not realizing that the others are nodding for the exact same frightened reason. The room manufactures a fake agreement, a confidence that nobody actually feels, but everybody performs. The doubts are all still there. They have just been pushed underground, where no one can act on them. And it gets worse, because groups under pressure start protecting the good feeling of being a unified team more than they protect the truth. They build an invisible wall. Anyone inside who raises a hard question is treated as a traitor to the group. Anyone outside who warns them is dismissed as an enemy, an idiot, a doomsayer. The group convinces itself it is too big, too smart, too chosen to fail. The very loyalty that makes the team strong is the thing that seals its eyes shut. History is littered with these rooms, war councils full of seasoned generals who marched confident armies into frozen, impossible disasters that any one of them alone by the fire might have called off. Circles of trusted advisors who watched the warning numbers climb year after year and kept reassuring each other that the numbers were nothing to worry about. Again and again, the same fingerprints at the scene. A confident leader who spoke first. A ring of clever people who each had a private doubt. And not a single one willing to be the lonely voice that breaks the warm, comfortable spell of agreement. That is the real horror of groupthink. It does not need fools. It works best on intelligent, loyal, capable people who care deeply about their team and who never once suspect that their loyalty is the very hand steering the ship onto the rocks. So now look at what we have assembled, a society that grows by piling on complexity until the weight becomes unbearable, citizens whose brains cannot feel a slow danger coming, and leaders locked in a room where doubt is silenced and confidence is faked. 3 clues. But there is a fourth, and it is the one that turns every comfortable assumption you have on its head. Because you would think that when the cliff finally appears, people would at least turn the wheel. They don't. And the reason why is the strangest clue of all. Here is the question that haunted a scientist named Jared Diamond. He looked at societies that collapsed completely, where the people starved, fought, and vanished from their own land, and he asked a single chilling question. What was going through the mind of the person who cut down the last tree? Think about that. On Easter Island, the people built a civilization that carved giant stone statues, and to move them and to live, they cut down their forest, tree by tree, generation by generation, until one day someone walked up to the very last tree on the entire island and cut it down too. That person could see it was the last one. There was nothing else around. And they did it anyway. Why? Diamond's answer is that collapse is almost never a single dramatic choice. It is 1,000 reasonable small choices that each made sense on the day they were made. The tree was cut for a fire, for a tool, for a roof. The same reason trees had always been cut. The man cutting it was not evil, and he was not stupid. He was doing the normal thing, the thing his father did, the thing that had always worked. He simply could not feel the difference between the millionth tree and the last tree, because to his eyes and his habits, they were the same tree. And Diamond found something even sharper, something that ties our whole investigation together. He noticed that the values that build a civilization are often the exact same values that destroy it. The Norse who settled Greenland were tough, proud cattle farmers, and that pride and toughness was their glory. It let them survive an unforgiving land for centuries. But when the climate turned cold, and the smart move was to eat fish and learn from the Inuit who were thriving all around them, the Norse refused. Eating fish was beneath them. Learning from people they looked down on was unthinkable. So they clung to their cattle and their identity, and they starved with the sea full of food right outside their door. Read that again, because it is the heart of the mystery. Their strength was their downfall. The very thing that made them who they were is the thing that would not let them change. A civilization rarely dies because it is too weak to survive. It dies because it is too committed to the way it has always won. You see the very same fingerprints on the Maya. Their kings answered every crisis the way kings had always answered crises, with grander temples, bigger monuments, more war to prove their power to the heavens. When the droughts came and the soil wore thin, the wise move was to ease the burden, to feed the people, to change. Instead, the kings doubled down on the exact behaviors that defined a great Maya king: building harder, fighting more, demanding more from land that had nothing left to give. They were not failing to act. They were acting with total conviction, pouring everything they had into the work, in precisely the wrong direction, because the ancient script of what a king must do had no page in it that said, "Stop." So now we have all 4 clues laid out on the table. And it is time to do what every detective does at the end: step back and reveal who the killer really was. Because it is not who you have been trained to expect. When a great civilization falls, we love to point at a villain, a mad emperor, a brutal invader, a plague, a flood, a betrayal. We want there to be a single cause, a single bad guy. Because a single bad guy means we are safe. We are not like that. We would never let that happen. But our investigation has uncovered something far more unsettling. There was no villain. The mistake every civilization makes is not a crime committed by bad people. It is a trap built by good ones. Look at what we found. They solved their problems by adding complexity, exactly as Tainter showed, until the weight of their own success began to crush them. Their citizens could not feel the slow danger rising, exactly as Kahneman showed, because the human brain treats yesterday as proof of tomorrow. Their leaders sat in rooms where doubt was silenced into fake confidence, exactly as Janis showed. And when the cliff finally came into view, they kept driving toward it, exactly as Diamond showed, because the habits and values that once saved them would not let them turn. Put it in one sentence, and here is the same mistake every single time. Civilizations collapse because the strategies that made them powerful become the strategies they can no longer stop using, long after those strategies have turned poisonous. Success becomes a script, and they keep reading the script even as the theater burns. That is why it keeps happening to the smart ones, not despite their intelligence, but because of it. A struggling, simple group stays flexible because it has no winning formula to be addicted to. A triumphant, complex civilization has a formula that worked so well, for so long, that questioning it feels like madness. Their greatest strength quietly becomes a cage. And they decorate the cage and call it home. And the people living through it almost never reach for the word collapse. That word belongs to the history books, written much later, by people looking back with the whole map in front of them. Inside the moment there is no dramatic music, no date counting down in the corner of the sky. There is just a harvest a little thinner than last year's, a tax a little higher than before, a war that drags on a little longer than the last one, a vague feeling barely worth mentioning that things are harder than they used to be, but surely they will bounce back, because they always have. Collapse is not a single event you can point to. It is a slope so gentle you can stand on it your entire life and swear, with complete honesty, that the ground beneath you is flat. Now the question you have been waiting for, the one that has been sitting in the back of your mind this entire time. What about us? We have more complexity than any society in history. Supply chains that wrap the planet, systems so tangled that no single human understands them. We have the same brains the Romans had, running the same ancient software. The normalcy bias, the sunk cost trap, the comforting belief that it cannot happen here. We have rooms at the top where nodding is safer than warning, and we have our own sacred values that we would rather starve than question. But here is where the story finally turns in your favor, and it is the reason this matters beyond being a sad tale about dead empires. Every other civilization made this mistake while it was completely invisible to them. They had no word for groupthink, no map of their own biases, no anthropologist whispering that complexity has a hidden cost. You do. You are the first generation in human history that can actually see the trap from the inside. because the detectives did their work and left us the case file. The mistake is only unbeatable when it is unseen. The moment you can name the normalcy bias, you can argue with it. The moment you can spot the nodding room, you can be the one who speaks. The moment you understand that your greatest strength might be your blind spot, you can do the one thing no collapsing civilization ever managed to do. You can ask, out loud, the dangerous question: is the thing that has always worked still working? Or am I just afraid to put it down? So the next time you feel completely certain, the next time everyone around you is nodding, the next time a quiet voice says it is probably nothing, remember the smoke rising over the town in 79 AD. Remember that collapse never feels like collapse from the inside. It feels like a normal Tuesday, and the only people who ever escape the pattern are the ones brave enough to look up at the mountain that everyone else has agreed to ignore. You were born with the same mind that buried Pompeii, but you were also born with something none of them had. You were born already knowing how the story ends. The only question left is what you choose to do with that.